that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Ben. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Gary, you need to pump up the energy. Remember when you were like, you're listening to a lot of like last podcasts on the left, and you're like, I'm going to match that energy.
Well, hello, everybody.
Whoa.
Welcome to the Cinema Shock Podcast.
Wow.
So happy to be alive and so happy to...
Whoa.
Welcome to the Cinema Shock Podcast.
Wow.
So happy to be alive and so happy to be here with you on this brand new year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, fellas.
Well, it's better than the last one.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, if you're hearing this as we're recording it, we've found out that the vaccine doesn't work and we're in the apocalypse.
Luckily, the podcast servers are still up.
Now we're broadcasting to you with some weird DJ named The Dog, and he's on some kind of, it's like the Fallout game. And so he's just like, well, hope all of you people out in the wasteland are doing okay. Here's another episode of the Cinema Shock Podcast, the only
I like to think it's that
recordings.
I like to think it's that guy at the beginning of that Audio Slave music video. Question is not when they're gonna video. Question is not when they're gonna stop talking about movies, but who is going
Leave it to
stop
Todd to do a fucking Audio Slave reference.
What's wrong with Audio Slave? I love Audio.
What's wrong with Audio Slave? They took.
Oh God, here
two
we
of the
go.
best
Here we
bands
go.
of the
Buckle
90s.
up, fans. It's the I Hate Audio Slave.
You
podcast.
had two of the best bands of the 90s. You had Rage Against the Machine. You had Soundgarden. You take elements from both of those, mash them together. It should be magic. And instead, it's some radio-friendly pop bullshit rock. And I hate it. I think it's terrible.
Fine,
Sorry, Todd.
Justin.
Audio
God.
Slave sucks.
I'm going to say, I hate doing this, but I'm just going to fall in the middle on that because, like, I don't love them. They don't have, like, any full album that I listen to, but they do have songs that I really like. The original fire is died.
Okay. Don't sing too much of that. We'll get flagged on YouTube there, Gary.
But anyway, so they got some stuff.
I should love Audio Slave, but I think they suck.
You sound like a guy who's not cool with Scott Stapp being cast as
Jesus.
No.
What? What?
Wait.
When did this happen? Just so you know,
playing
we
Frank
are going to
Sinatra. I thought that sounded crazy when I was going to say it just now, and I just looked it up, and it is. He's playing Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah, it's in like
my God.
It's in a Ronald Reagan biopic that's coming out.
Yeah.
Fans, don't worry. We are going to get to Death Rides a Horse. We're just,
Oh my God.
it's been a long week. We're just reacquainting ourselves with each other.
Yeah. Scott Stapp sounds like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. If ever I've listened to a vocalist and said that's who should play Frank Sinatra, it's the guy from Creed.
Anyway, well, thanks
Him
for
and
being
his
here with
sack of
us.
rice.
It's a new year, but the podcast is still the same. We're going to talk about movies and tell you all the deep diving stories you want to hear about them that we can. Some of them are harder than others. It's easy to find stuff about Batman movies, harder to find stuff from Italy, but we still got it. We still got some stuff.
We have done our best. That's what we have done. So it is a new year. And
I'm Gary Horde, by the way. I don't think I said that.
That's your co-host Gary Horn. I'm your co-host Justin Bishop. Joining us today is writer, comedian. That's all I got. Writer, comedian Todd.
Come on, Justin, hit me with it.
I didn't have anything today.
You already stepped on my Audio Slave. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Writer, comedian, and Audio Slave fan. I mean, there's an insult for you.
I like to
Mr.
think that Todd
A. Davis.
I'd like to think that Audio Slave is just the alternate nickname for his penis. And you just stepped on his penis.
We'll have to get Kat to chime in on that.
Oh, anyway, it's a new year, and we are starting a new series here on the podcast.
You want to put a little Audio Slave in your ear tonight?
Oh my God. We
Anyway,
let
go ahead.
continue the
Sorry.
podcast. So this is a series we've been wanting to do for a long time called The 6 Degrees of Kill Bill. I guess we should give a little background. Kill Bill, for anyone who might have lived under a rock for the last 15 years, doesn't know, Kill Bill is a two-part film by Quentin Tarantino. And like many Quentin Tarantino movies, it references a lot of other movies. I mean, if you know anything about Quentin Tarantino, if you've ever heard any interview with him, then you know that the guy, he likes movies. He likes to talk about movies. He likes to talk in general, but he especially likes to talk about movies, especially those like exploitation and genre movies of the 70s. Stuff
I reject your thesis.
If you are a fan of his stuff, then you know that his films often contain references to a lot of those movies that he loves. Every one of his movies, it contains a more references than we could possibly talk about here on the show.
Quick side note, does anybody else think Miles sounds like Quentin Tarantino a lot when he gets
Miles
excited?
Griffin?
Yeah, Miles, our special guest Miles. I hear
No.
it. So I almost feel like
no.
if we're going to have quotes from
I'm super on
or
board
we
with
get
having him
DJ to record it. And if nobody's ever heard Quentin Tarantino talk before and they think he sounds like DJ with like his they're going to be real freaking shocked. Like when they see Tarantino finally talk.
But here's the thing: it has to be like an accurate translation with all the ums and the ahs and the yas
And the all right.
all right.
I was watching
God,
interviews.
Yes, let's
so
do that.
I every time I look up Tarantino, I get sucked into one of the interviews where like he gets interviewed by the one dude, I can't think of his name, but it just pisses him off. And he's just like, this is a commercial for my movie. Don't get the wrong idea. And the guy's like, well, you blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I reject your thesis. And we're moving on. I can end this at any time. It's great. It's a great interview.
I love that. Hey,
awesome.
you know, he's right. Anyway, so he references these movies that he loves a lot, but I think out of all the movies he's made, which he's up to 9, I love that. Hey,
awesome.
you know, he's right. Anyway, so he references these movies that he loves a lot, but I think out of all the movies he's made, which he's up to 9 of them now with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I don't think he wears his influences on his sleeve more blatantly, I think, than he does in his 2-part revenge epic Kill Bill. Came out in 2004. So for the next few weeks, we are going to attempt to cover some of the films that are most clearly referenced in Kill Bill with this new series. We're calling it The 6 Degrees of Kill Bill. It's going to be 6 movies that we think are major influences on Kill Bill. We obviously can't touch on every movie that inspired it, or we would spend the entirety of 2021 talking about Kill Bill. But we'll try to touch on 6 movies that I think are some of the biggest touchstones. So we're going to start things off. We're kind of going in these in just chronological order based on the time that the movie was released. So we're going back to 1967 for the first one. We're starting off with a spaghetti.
When you've waited 15 years to find a man, it's a shame you can only kill him once. The bandits who killed 5 defenseless people made one big mistake. They should have killed 6. Ever since he was a little boy, there was one thing he always wanted to do: find 4 men and kill them.
We got to get away, get the soundtrack in this. Man, I'll tell you what, my wife, she's only mildly excited about this series, to be honest, but like she was on the couch while I was watching this movie the first time, which I have watched it twice now in 1 week. Spoiler alert, I fucking love this movie. Anyway, she kept dozing off or something, but when she woke up, she was like, that movie, it has some amazing music. Twice now in 1 week. Spoiler alert, I fucking love this movie. Anyway, she kept dozing off or something, but when she woke up, she was like, that movie, it has some amazing music. She's like, that's all I know is I kept waking up and thinking, this music is so cool for this old Western movie.
Yeah, it's Ennio Morricone. Who is arguably, we'll get into it, but arguably one of the like top 5 composers of all time. Right. And that music is so good that, yes, it is used in Kill Bill. I mean, because when we talk about Kill Bill's references, if you even if you wanted to pick a spaghetti Western, because it's like, oh yeah, of course a spaghetti Western is a major influence. You could talk about any number of spaghetti Westerns, but this is one, Death Rides a Horse is one that Tarantino very specifically references in Kill Bill, going so far as to borrow that Ennio Morricone score for his film. And we just played the trailer for you guys. And in the trailer, there's even I don't think it's even in the movie, but in the trailer, the something along the lines of the bandits killed 5 defenseless people that night, but made one big mistake. They should have killed 6. That line is almost taken directly line for line in Kill Bill when they talk about Lucy Liu's Oren Ishii's origin story. And actually a lot of what's his name, Bill character's backstory in this parallels Oren Ishii's backstory.
Yeah, they killed 10 people that day, but they made a mistake. They only killed 9.
Yeah. So that's just the first of quite a few major influences in this film, like that are not just influence, but that Tarantino is directly taking from this movie that he loves. Maybe Death Rides a Horse is not as well known as some of the films by, someone like Sergio Leone, who is arguably like the king of the spaghetti Western. But I think it deserves to be discussed in the same conversation as Leone's Dollars trilogy, which is, I'm sure, a series that we'll discuss one day on this podcast, because it's a touchstone for these type of movies.
I think if you look back, I mean, everything I was able to dig up, I swear everything you find somehow references Tarantino almost. It's almost like this movie was going to just go into obscurity if not for him.
It really did.
It up.
This movie is a cult film today because Quentin Tarantino has talked about it so much and referenced it so much. Otherwise, it was, yes, very much in danger of being forgotten. I think having some of the same creatives working on it that worked on Leone's films probably would have helped it from fading completely into obscurity. But it definitely has the cult following it does now because of Quentin Tarantino and because of Kill Bill. And it has some major connections to Leone's films.
I don't want to crap on, by the way, just to throw this in there real quick. I wasn't crapping on its legacy just as a movie. It probably would have been around in its,
Sure.
Some people would know it, but
not as many people.
Right, exactly.
Probably not as many people.
And they timed it really. Once upon a time in the West, he was pretty darn prolific in the 60s. If you think about how many gentleman callers Justin's mom has in a night, you'll get an idea of what Leone was doing in the 60s with films. I'm just kidding.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. Bring it back to your mama thing, apparently. But I'm just kidding. It's not as many as her. But starting in 64, and for the next couple of years, he had A Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And then I imagine people just started expecting
all things that happened to her in the night. She'll end up with a fistful of dollars, asking for a few dollars more. Wow. She usually is with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Justin's he's going to start off pissed off at us. But no, I imagine everybody just started expecting Sergio Leone spaghetti Western movies. But when he was getting ready for Once Upon a Time, it comes out in 68, he took 67 completely off, which led to this film almost having perfect timing, because
she'll end up with a fistful of dollars, asking for a few dollars more. Wow. She usually is with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Justin's he's going to start off pissed off at us. But no, I imagine everybody just started expecting Sergio Leone spaghetti Western movies. But when he was getting ready for Once Upon a Time, it comes out in 68, he took 67 completely off, which led to this film almost having perfect timing. Because
it shares quite a few of the same cast members. Honestly, a lot of the bad guys in this are part of Leone's Dollars trilogy rogue gallery. Plus, of course, you've got Ennio Morricone working on the score. You've got Lee Van Cleef as your star, who was in the second and third of the Dollars trilogy, and most importantly, probably is screenwriter Luciano Vincenzoni. So Vincenzoni was a well-respected script doctor in Italy. He was a very well-established screenwriter. Even after this, he went on to do Red Dawn with Arnold Schwarzenegger later in his career.
I was looking up, it felt like they not just a script doctor, he was known as the script doctor.
Right. And he had a storied career before and after this. He worked with Billy Wilder, later on he worked on stuff like Red Dawn and Melina, I think was his last name, which is kind of an Italian, I'd say, art house film from the early 2000s. I think that was probably his last film. But his collaborations with Sergio Leone marked his most mainstream works, his most well-known internationally at the time. And that was something that he was actually kind of resentful for later in life, because he kind of saw those as being beneath him a little bit, like they were just kind of jobs that he was doing. He later said in an interview, "I have written movies that won the prizes at Cannes and Venice. These were screenplays for which we suffered on paper for months. Do you know how long it took me to write For a Few Dollars More? 9 days."
Wow.
Yeah, he was pretty particular. And
Know how long it took me to write For a Few Dollars More? 9 days.
Wow.
yeah, he was pretty particular. And I read some stuff with Petroni, and apparently they weren't like the best of friends or anything necessarily. That he thought that Vincenzoni thought himself above the Western genre.
Right.
And so, like, for a guy like Petroni, like, Westerns were like a thing he grew up on, like he loved.
Well, for a Few Dollars More was released in 1965. That was the sequel to Fistful of Dollars, which was based on the Akira Kurosawa movie, Yojimbo. That's a whole series we can talk about later, because I love those movies. And I love Yojimbo and Sanjuro, the Akira Kurosawa movies. So that's a whole nother conversation. But they, after the success of Fistful of Dollars, of course, they went to make a sequel. And that was Vincenzoni's first collaboration with Leone. Vincenzoni wrote the screenplay. It was based on a story idea by Sergio Leone. And that film was in 1966, a year later. And the success of those films kind of led to some tension between the two, between Vincenzoni and Leone, because Leone was kind of resentful over sharing credit and sharing profits with his screenwriter. And they kind of had a falling out after that. And they would later reconnect, but it was after that falling out with Leone that Vincenzoni went to work with director Giulio Petroni on a new spaghetti Western, which was one that would sort of try to emulate Leone's signature tone. I mean, visually, this is I think Death Rides a Horse is the most like a Leone movie visually than any other spaghetti Western that wasn't directed by Sergio Leone.
Feels like that's part of that thing that, like, you showed up in the right year too, like, because now, like, people are used to the Leone things, and then now you've got a movie that feels like one. And if you're familiar at all with, like, A Few Dollars More, we talk about Kill Bill lifting things from this movie. It lifted things from A Few Dollars More, like with the massacre and, like, kind of the story of the two guys. Like, there's, like, stuff.
John Philip Law's character is dressed just like Clint Eastwood's character.
Yeah, true.
I kept thinking, like, I've seen that outfit before, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere too that the original title for this script was called, like, Duel in the Wind. And then Lee Van Cleef, he was having a conversation with John Philip Law, and Law mentioned this is like a man-to-man story or something. And Van Cleef said, well, why don't they call it From Man to Man? And, like, the Italian producers heard that, and they liked how it sounded in Italian, which I would F up, but it's like De Uomo or something like that. I'm probably screwing that up, but
man to a man is what it translates to. Yeah,
but they used it, and then it eventually got retitled to Death Rides a Horse
for the U.S.
English speaking. Law says he never liked that aspect of it.
It's very biblical, sounding.
And supposedly now in, like, European markets and stuff, it still gets sold with that other title on it or something.
Oh yeah. So Giulio Petroni had begun his filmmaking career in the early 1950s. He started out doing, like, political short films before making his feature film debut with a 1959 comedy actually called La Centro Kilometri, which means, like, the last kilometer or something like that. I think it's the last kilometer. Oh, fun. Anyway, I don't speak Italian, so I apologize to any Italian speakers who might.
It's our third biggest market.
Yeah, it is. I do apologize for any of these names that I'm going to fuck up, because I am doing my best. But it was kind of the spaghetti Westerns that he would make. He made about 5 of them in all in a row that he would kind of become known for. And the first of those Westerns was Death Rides a Horse. And he had grown up as a fan of American Westerns and a fan of American Western novels. He grew up reading these things. And he said about novels, he grew up reading these things. And he said about that, he said, what intrigued me most in the idea of the West was this aspect of adventure, of nature in its purest state. I was attracted by the idea to make an adventure movie that reminded me of the books I loved when I was a child. So he, like Gary mentioned, he was a fan of these movies. He loved Westerns growing up. And he was kind of trying to bring the images that his mind conjured up in those novels to life in making this movie.
Well, I made the joke to my wife, as I was sitting down to watch these. I was like, if you're looking for a great American Western, trust the Italians. But in going into it, it kind of reminds me of, how after Snow White premiered, the Japanese started doing things that were heavily influenced by Walt Disney's animation. And it's just so much fun to see how the one art influences someone else somewhere else who brings their own spin to it. And yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen Yojimbo. If you haven't, I highly, highly recommend it. It's incredibly entertaining. It's my personal favorite Kurosawa movie. It is a samurai movie, but one that is very much inspired by American Westerns. Has a lot of the same tropes as an American Western. It's a loner guy comes into a town to clean things up, Cool. It was inspired by the American Western, and then ironically got remade by Sergio Leone as Fistful of Dollars in a film that is sort of emulating American Westerns, because that's what spaghetti Westerns were. Spaghetti Westerns were emulating American Westerns, but even American Westerns are heavily stylized versions of history and not at all like what things were really like in the West. So this whole like circle of influence that is...
Yeah, it's one big like chicken or egg. Like, well, it was this. No, but it was actually emulating this. And then
it's funny to see people get pissed off about it either. I think like Toho sued Leone or something.
It's actually emulating this. And then
it's funny to see people get pissed off about it either. I think like Toho sued Leone or something for
because he didn't credit Kurosawa, but it's very much a remake. I mean, The Magnificent Seven is also a remake of The Seven Samurai, another Kurosawa movie. So, it wasn't the first or the last time that happened.
God, you're absolutely right. This series could be huge.
Yeah. If you just go into an entire Kurosawa, Leone circle of Western samurai, like all the influences they go back and forth. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. It's funny, like listening to the interview with Alex
Trebek.
Rest
in peace.
No, Alex Cox. God, I couldn't remember.
Director of Repo Man, one of my favorite movies.
When he's talking about the thing, like, I was telling Justin before we started rolling, like he goes into so much deep stuff. Like, there's just no way we need to tackle everything. But I will say this for him. He does a film about the Mexican Revolution called Tepepa, which he considers his best movie. And Alex Cox is telling stories about being in rooms where he would like get to meet folks like Petroni, and like everybody's asking him like, which do you like more? Is Death Rides a Horse, right? Death Rides a Horse. He's like, Tepepa is my best movie. And they're like, no.
Tepepa's pretty, I've never seen it, but it's very well regarded. In fact, I looked up the Spaghetti Western database. They actually spoke to Quentin Tarantino about his favorite spaghetti Westerns. And of course, this was on there. This was number 7, I think. So this isn't even at the top. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is at the top because it's the best of them, but yeah, Tepepa is in the top 10 as well. I can't remember exactly where. I think it's either one before or right after this. I think this and like Day of Anger and Tepepa were all right there together. But the top ones were the Leone and like the Django movies, I think. That's one that I want to watch because as I was researching this episode, I read a lot about Tepepa, I think. That's one that I want to watch because as I was researching this episode, I read a lot about Tepepa and I had never even heard of it. I didn't know about it. Go back and watch it now.
It's pretty cool too. It's like at the story, about the whole Mexican Revolution thing. It just seems like an interesting, and it's also, forgive me, the writer of that, but he also apparently was very good at like fitting like political allegory into these stories. So there's like a huge political message in it and stuff. It's pretty deep apparently.
And it's got Orson Welles in it. And I want to see a spaghetti Western with Orson Welles in it.
There you go.
So it was producers Alfonso Sansoni and Enrico Chorsicchi. It was their idea to make a Western. They approached Petroni about this, and they asked him, if he'd be interested to make a Western. And by the time they approached him, they already had in mind kind of what they wanted to do, not necessarily the script, but they knew one thing. They knew they wanted Lee Van Cleef as their star.
Who wouldn't? Right. God bless him. That's that guy. He's like, I was watching it this second time around, and I was like, man, if I watch some more of these, like Lee Van Cleef could be up there. Like any one of Lee Van Cleef's movies could be right up there with like Quint from Jaws. I was like, there's something about him to me that
he's a badass, man.
He just looks like a badass.
He's a badass. And So Lee Van Cleef was born in New Jersey in 1925, joined the Navy at the age of 17, where he was assigned to a submarine chaser and then to a minesweeper. And his ship, he was on the USS, he was later assigned to the USS Incredible. They participated in the landings in southern France during World War II. So the dude, like, not only saw combat, but he saw some shit.
Yeah, I was going to say, he saw some heavy shit, man.
Yeah. After leaving the Navy, he kind of found he was discharged, honorably discharged after his service. And
we should clarify too for the folks, the younger folks, people our age too, that
leaving the Navy, he kind of found he was discharged, honorably discharged after his service. And
we should clarify too for the folks, the younger folks, people our age too, that minesweeping back then was a lot more difficult than on the PC.
People, I was about to say, people our age might know the thing on the PC, but anyone younger than us,
yeah,
they
you're
don't know
right.
what we're talking about because that is some old
remake Minesweeper, you cowards.
Isn't that what Minecrafter is? Is that what Minecraft is?
Probably. We're old. I don't know.
I tried to play Among Us last night. I downloaded it.
I did that a few weeks ago, and I was like,
I downloaded
have no
it to
idea.
my Switch, and I was like, I played for 10 minutes and I just walked around this building and I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I don't understand this.
Jennifer's been playing.
What it feels like to be old.
Yes, because like we were in bed the other night. Jennifer like plays like she loves her mom games, like Candy Crush style games, you know, those kind of things. And so I'm like, what's this Among Us thing? Like, it's super popular, that stupid fucking game. And the whole time she was like, do you like it? And I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I think you have to play it with other people. Like, otherwise it doesn't
There were
work.
other people in there.
Oh, okay.
And the only time I ever communicated with them was when somebody would like bring us in to accuse someone, and they'd be like, I think I did that on accident, actually, because I was just seeing what it did. And they all gather around and they're like, why? Why do you say red? And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like that's the one. Is red the one? What is the one? What are we doing?
So after leaving the Navy, Lee Van Cleef found a love for acting. He read for a part in Our Town. He got the job, and that kind of led to a little bit of a stage career for him. He worked on stage for a few years before making his big screen debut, or his screen debut period, in Stanley Kramer's High Noon. High Noon, of course, is a incredibly famous Western.
Yeah.
In Stanley Kramer's High Noon. High Noon, of course, is a incredibly famous Western.
Yeah.
One of the best out there. And so Stanley Kramer had noticed Van Cleef during a performance of one of his plays in Los Angeles, and he offered him a role. He originally wanted him for the role of the deputy in the film, one of the main roles. But he wanted Van Cleef to have his, and this is a quote from Kramer, his distinctive nose fixed. And Lee Van Cleef decided he didn't want to do that. And he ended up playing the part of the silent gunslinger Jack Colby. And after that role, he was kind of typecast as playing mostly villainous roles throughout his career because he looks like a villain. I mean, he's got
only bad guys have a honker like that one, Lee.
he's got a pointy, like he's got those high cheekbones. He's got those eyes that are like a permanent squint, kind of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got kind of that like pointy face. He's got like a pointy nose, like almost like a hawk's beak. I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive, but he looks like really took off in a big way until Sergio Leone cast him in For a Few Dollars More, where he starred alongside Clint Eastwood. And then he followed that up by a role as the main antagonist in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And after that kind of 1-2 punch of two very popular films and major roles in those popular films, he became a major star of spaghetti westerns. Now, we don't have time to get into, or at least this is not the series, I think, where we're going to get into the long history of spaghetti westerns. But if you've seen, let's say, Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Leo's character in that, kind of a washed up actor.
Yeah.
Looking for a second career, and he gets a job going to Italy to make a spaghetti western. And that's kind of what happened a lot of times. A lot of times actors who couldn't really get, either their career had stagnated or their career had kind of hit a wall, or maybe their career never truly had taken off, they would get cast in spaghetti westerns because the Italian directors truly had taken off. They would get cast in spaghetti westerns because the Italian directors wanted these Americans to play cowboys in their movies.
Of course.
There's a lot more that goes into this. I mean, also most Italian spaghetti westerns were filmed in Spain, not in Italy. So there's a lot about spaghetti westerns that I don't.
I was wondering about that. I was like, is that really the Italy? I mean, is that
No,
what
yeah,
Italy
they
looks
film
like?
they film most of these movies in Spain.
There were sets that are in it that are built around Italy or like
Yeah,
right
there
outside.
are, but most of the on
I think
locations.
the Gorge location too was in Italy, from what the Blu-ray commentary told me.
So but that's kind of the very, very short, very simplified version of what's going on here. But that's kind of
The prison that he comes out of is in Spain, though. It's a Spanish fort, and right behind the camera is a beach. Also, from the Blu-ray commentary, you're welcome.
Thank you. You don't have to say it's from the Blu-ray commentary every time.
We're talking about it. That's a thing I heard. I didn't even put that in my notes. I just, for some reason, I remember random ass shit.
Yeah, but that's what kind of happened with Lee Van Cleef, is that, you know, he was a guy who, he was older and his career had never really taken off, and then Sergio Leone cast him. And the same thing kind of happened with Clint Eastwood, which again, that's something we'll get into probably on a series on the Leone movies. But Clint Eastwood had been a star of television before those movies, but those movies, you know, his career in Hollywood wasn't really taking off in the movies until Leone cast him as the Man with No Name, and then of course, you know, the rest is history.
He'd almost given up on acting completely. Like he had
Van Cleef,
yeah, had been doing stuff here and there, and he had taken up painting. Like, he's apparently a painter, and he was switching over to that to try to be his like full-time gig. And then he hit with a few dollars more. Like, I think in 1959, I was reading about him. He got into a car accident, lost his left kneecap, so that the doctors are like,
"What?
You're not gonna be able to ride a horse again." And
like, he lost his whole kneecap?
Yeah, it said that's what it said. Straight up lost his kneecap. And
Wow.
said, you're not going to be able to ride horses and stuff. And then he's just like, well, fuck, because that's the only thing I'm doing now. And,
Right.
But it took 6 months therapy, and he was back on a horse again. So, you know, he beat that, but he was learning painting and stuff like that. He'd kind of given up on it. And
That'd be a fun little thing to have, a Van Cleef hanging in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But then it was just like lightning, you know, struck for him because, or whatever. It's just like he had a few dollars more. And so these are like US release dates, I think, but in like a few dollars more in May of 67, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in December 67, The Big Gun Down, which is another one of Tarantino's favorites, was like August of 68, Death Rides a Horse in 69. Those are he was the man. And yeah, mostly as a villain, like we pointed out before. I saw a quote with him, and he just said, bad guys have always been my bag. I look mean without even trying. Audiences just naturally hate me. I could play a role in a tuxedo and people would just think I was rotten. You could do much more with the villain part anyway. Movies are full of leading men. Most of them aren't working. It's harder to find a good villain.
Well, hey, I mean, and that's the thing. So his co-star in this is a guy named John Philip Law, and John Philip Law has done some interesting stuff, but he doesn't have the recognizability or the career that someone like Van Cleef does. Because John Philip Law is a handsome dude, blonde hair, blue eye, you know, like typical leading man look.
Yeah.
But kind of bland. He's not terribly distinctive. So John Philip Law was born in Los Angeles in 1937. He was the son of an LA County deputy named John Law, which sounds made up.
Yeah. See, I thought when I saw his name, I was,
which sounds made up.
Yeah. See, I thought when I saw his name, I was like, that has to be a stage name.
No.
Who says there's no such thing as destiny?
So in college, John Philip Law was in several stage productions, decided he wanted to be an actor like his mother. His mother was an actress. Not terribly well known, but she was an actress as well. And he'd become a pretty successful stage actor before making the jump to the screen, where he acted actually in several Italian productions. He was working a lot in Italy. Ironically, it was these Italian films that he made that finally got the attention of film producers back in his home country, because director Norman Jewison saw some of these films and thought that he'd be perfect for a role in his film, a film called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. So he cast John Law in this, and that film was a major success, and it launched Law's career in Hollywood. It led to a role in Otto Preminger's Hurry Sundown. Mm-hmm. So that film, that's for Fonda to make Barbarella. She actually recommended Law for the film. She wanted him in it. And production on Barbarella was actually delayed so that Law could star in Death Rides a Horse.
Wow.
He would later they ended up doing Barbarella afterwards, and he did end up playing the angel in Barbarella a year later that came out in 1968. And in that same year, he actually also played the title role in Mario Bava's Danger Diabolique.
Yeah, so
Definitely another cinema shock movie.
The cool part for this movie is that, I mean, by the time it's rolling around and getting like word of mouth or like known, I mean, these two guys, Van Cleef and Law, are like big budget actors at a certain point. And so it's kind of cool that you have both of them in this movie, you know. It was, of course, it was obviously, like we said, cast before either of them were really huge. But
yeah, because Barbarella came out in 68. This movie came out in 67, but didn't come out in America until 60.
Either of them were really huge. But
yeah, because Barbarella came out in 68. This movie came out in 67, but didn't come out in America until 69 after Barbarella had already hit.
And so then it was like a bigger deal because of that, like those two guys. The major stuff I could find about Law, like just that he, you know, he got hired, but he didn't know anything about the cowboy stuff, he said, like horse riding and twirling his gun and all of that. So the Italians had cowboy school they put him through, and like trained him. So they got him learned up. But he's a smart dude, man. He is fluent in like Italian and German and French and all of these things. Like he knows like 4 different languages at least. So he's
that's awesome.
On him. Got him work, I guess.
Death Rides a Horse also marked the first of several collaborations between Petroni and composer Ennio Morricone, who we commented on a little bit earlier. But I think that his score in this film is legitimately one of his best scores. Like it works so great in the context of the film. And it really proves how much a great score can elevate a fairly low budget movie into something bigger. Like it just makes it feel epic, you know, at all times.
You just throw in the Blu-ray of the movie. And I had not seen this movie before. So like you just throw in the Blu-ray of the movie and that title screen coming up with that major like theme playing. Something about that, just like there is an epicness. Yeah, that, like, I don't know. I was like, I'll say it. I was kind of giddy about starting the movie. I was like, what is this? This sounds fun. And then if you go to the trailer, that damn trailer, then you're like, holy great. Shit. I want to see this movie so bad right now. And it lives up to it. I liked it.
So the film was released in August of 1967 in Italy. It was released in 1969 in the US and the UK. And reviews were pretty lukewarm on the. So the film was released in August of 1967 in Italy. It was released in 1969 in the US and the UK. And reviews were pretty lukewarm on this film. Here is an excerpt from a review from a writer named A.H. Weiler. This was published in July of 69. So this was a review that was written at the time of release. It says, Death Rides a Horse, which rocked the DeMille Theater yesterday like a convention of drunken firecracker salesmen, is proof in stark colors once again of the indestructibility of the spaghetti Western, produced continuously and cheaply over the last 5 years by Italians in Spain with an imported Hollywood rawhide or two to ramrod the gory goings on. As usual, the clutter of cliches is exceeded only by the excessive sound and fury. And then he goes on at the end of his review. This is actually the last sentence of that review. Vengeance is a dish that must be eaten cold, Mr. Van Cleef observes philosophically. He's right. Death Rides a Horse is not so hot. So
it's tough, man. I saw like Ebert gave it like 1 star.
Ebert gave it a bad review as well. But Ebert also, did you read Ebert's full review?
Oh, yeah. I have a quote here from it that I loved. Because he definitely calls it a bad movie, references Pauline Kael and like her trying to talk about explaining the fun that can be found in the right kind of bad movie. And he says Death Rides a Horse is a bad movie indeed. But then he says, quote from his review, he says, and yet there's something about surrendering yourself to a dark womb-like security of a large loop theater on a Saturday afternoon and hunkering down in your seat and simply abandoning yourself to a movie like this. From time to time, you will laugh or be thrilled or distract yourself by noticing that some of the outdoor scenes are shot in a studio with backdrops. What he says in parentheses, at one point, the hero casts a shadow across an entire mountain range. Or you can try to unravel the puzzles of mistaken or double identity upon which the plots of spaghetti westerns always seem to depend. The heroes of these films would save a lot of time if they'd accept one simple rule of thumb. Generally speaking, everyone they meet is either A, the man who killed their families 15 years ago. B, a stranger who was after the same villains for a mysterious reason of their own. Or C, their father, brother, or son.
It's such a fun review because yes, he gives it 1 star and he calls it a bad movie, but he's like, yeah, but sometimes this is like exactly what you want to watch. And I don't agree that this is a bad movie with it, but because I actually think this is a really great movie personally.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, there were, to be honest, I was fully prepared for this to be not great because there's an early on shootout in the saloon. I think it's where Bill is meeting up with Four Aces, Calhoun, right?
Talking about
Four Aces.
Guy,
anyway,
I kept calling him Al Swearingen the whole time.
So
he looks like Ian McShane.
He draws and puts 4 into Four Aces, and then he puts like 2 more into another guy, and then like 3 more into another guy. And I looked at my wife and I was like, how many fucking bullets does he have in that revolver? But then the next thing is like, there's Ryan, and he kind of explains like, better, you got to watch your back or whatever. I was just like, and he's like, you put 4 bullets into that dude? What the hell? And and I was like, okay, so this isn't,
they knew what they were doing.
They know what they're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. So I think I was like a little trepidatious at first, but after that I was like, okay, I'm in.
See, I was sold because I think this was all a first time watch for all of us, I believe.
Yeah.
I was sold after that opening sequence. That opening sequence was a horror movie. Like
I was about to say the same thing.
That opening sequence was a horror movie. Like
I was about to say the same thing. It starts off like an Italian horror movie.
It's a fucking slasher movie, like 3 credits. Ooh. And it is way more brutal than you expect it to open. And it's like a great opening to this movie. And you automatically you're like, we're in the shit. Like, this is great. And these movies, they don't have like a ton of they have a lot of silent characters. There's not a ton of dialogue in spaghetti westerns. But the dialogue that is in this, man, there's some gems.
Do you know? Well, let me say this first. Just the dialogue thing. What's interesting is I was studying on this a little bit, and Clint Eastwood and Van Cleef separately both say the same exact thing, that when you go to do a spaghetti western, when you go to do an Italian film altogether, they say the first, and maybe it was Law who said this, that Van Cleef gave him this tip. It was like, but then they ended up digging it more if you can like just express what you need to say in like 3 lines.
Yeah.
And, so that's always like, apparently the way it came across is like, it's ad lib by these guys a lot of times. Just like, how do I get this back? Like there's a scene where they're under the ridge and Van Cleef, it's the first time Law takes his horse and is like, it leaves him in his gun, and you're going to need this, grandpa. But it's like, you watch that scene and there's like 1 to 2 lines each time one of them speak. Cox on the commentary was saying, I had the original script of this movie, and he was like, he was like a page of dialogue between those 2 people. He's like, but these guys are just like dropping like 1 to 2 lines each, just like back and forth, and then they get the point across and they move on.
Yeah. Ryan Lee Van Cleef's character in particular, I think, has just some of the best dialogue, some of my favorite stuff. My favorite, I think, and it's hard to pick up as just some of the best dialogue, some of my favorite stuff. My favorite, I think, and it's hard to pick a favorite, because there's that. Okay, so some runners up, like there's one where he's getting his gun back when he gets out of jail.
Yeah.
And he's like, 27, you have a good memory. And he says something like, I had 6 in my 1 and 21 in my belt. If they hadn't double crossed me, the count might have been a little different. Like, that is such a badass line.
Yeah.
That is great.
That's really good.
But my favorite, I think, is when they're about to have the duel and he says, piano player, hit 3 notes.
Yeah.
And that is just such a badass line.
I wanted to go there because Todd was talking about that scene. I was like, do you really think they do that? Like, what? Like, what would they have done to Four Aces if he'd have just been like, fuck that, just like shot the guy? Right. Like, and is there just like a code of honor there with those guys? But something,
and that's Bill. I should preference that's John Law's character. But
but one of the things, this is a comedy film, if I'm not mistaken, and so he has like some comedy instincts because you mentioned earlier Law being kind of bland. Like, I mean, he's got a good look. You know, he's 6'4". He's
Sure,
like
he looks
super
like
thin.
a Hollywood.
Yeah, he looks like
Yeah,
a Hollywood movie star. But there's something in this movie that the script serves him. Like the way they got these lines across and shot them. I loved him in this movie. Like he just had good stuff. Like when Van Cleef is like telling him, like, you know, you need to back off a little bit from this guy because you're gonna end up making me mad. And he's just like, well, I'm gonna find out who he is, and if you see who I think he is, better get ready to be mad. It's just like has that.
Yeah.
Or like when he gets in the duel with the one guy in the bar where he saves the server and stuff, and he's just like, the guy's like, oh, you blah blah blah. He says something to him, and he's like, you got a stupid face, but you get it.
Yeah, that's the guy who says what he says. It's one of the henchmen. He's like, "What are you trying to say? I'm afraid." You got a stupid face, but you get it. Like,
yeah, it's like I'm like, this movie is full of badass lines.
That's awesome. It's great.
Incoming transmission.
Hey folks, it's your old friend Mr. Todd A. Davis from the Cinema Shock podcast, here to ask, are you tired of seeing a random episode of Star Trek and thinking, I wonder where this falls into the overall prime timeline? I know I am. That's why I'm bringing you a new podcast covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order. It's called Computer Resume Podcast. Each week, join me and a rotating panel of my family and friends as we boldly talk Trek like no one has before. If there's a joke to be made, we'll make it. And if there's a poignant discussion to be had, well, we'll try our best. We'll also have interviews, contests, take listener questions, and other. So join us every week starting in January of 2021 for the Computer Resume Podcast, free wherever you get your podcasts. And be the first to hit us up online now at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or email us directly at computerresumepodcast@gmail.com. The Computer Resume Podcast, part of the Slice of Fried Gold Network. Hashtag LLAP. We'll see you soon.
Well, yeah, we talked about the I guess contemporary reviews at the time that it was released being not so great. And if you go read them, there's a lot of not so great reviews that came out at the time. But there are some I'm willing to bet, Gary, there are some present day reviewers of this film that might not have joined the cult as we seem to have.
Justin, you know that somebody watched this movie, and now that somebody needs a nap. That somebody watched this movie, and now that somebody needs a nap. Let's see here. There were some good ones. I saved a couple here. Jerry L. on Amazon gave it 1 out of 5 stars. He said, worst movie I've ever attempted to watch as far as quality goes. He says, you'll tell right off the bat, this was not his bag either. But he says, spaghetti Western, I've always hated these. I should have known when it said Lee Van Cleef that it was just another spaghetti Western. But this one has to be this one has to be the worst picture quality I've ever seen in my life. The sound is bad. To me, the spaghetti Western always seemed to be thrown together with the cheapest of cameras, the cheapest of sound equipment, the lowest of budgets. I look back on Clint Eastwood ahead in the movie and saw this for what it was, another worthless spaghetti Western. And I knew I wasn't going to waste my time on it. I turned it off, deleted it from my watch list, and that is the extent of my experience with this movie. I thought from the title and the intro that it would be a good movie. 45 seconds showed me I was mistaken. If you like cheap-made spaghetti Westerns that are really bad quality, this is a must-see for you. Good luck.
So he's judging this based on 45 seconds of film and giving it 1 star. And I will say, he comments on the quality of the picture. Now, I originally attempted to watch this on Amazon Prime because it's on there. It's on there twice.
That's where I watched it.
Which is unfortunate, even though I texted you and told you not to watch it on there after I tried to.
Justin did mention that, and
because
don't watch it on Amazon Prime, apparently.
Don't watch it on Amazon Prime because it looks like somebody took a beat-up VHS and then transferred it, like digitally transferred it to Amazon Prime and didn't, like it's still in that full screen aspect ratio, that 1.33, it's panned. It's a horrible transfer. But there's a great Blu-ray of it out, and if you get it through like I got it through Vudu, and I think it's the same transfer they're using on the Blu-ray because it looks and sounds outstanding.
Nice. I was about to say it's so weird because when I was watching this Blu-ray, which is how I bought it, and one of my biggest things was just how beautiful it was. Like,
it's a great looking movie.
I think it looks amazing, and the sound is awesome. But just I love everything about the camera work in this movie, and just the close-ups they do, which I think also is a thing Tarantino takes. It's like close-ups on the eyes and the panning, and that's fucking great.
Well, there even with the poor quality of the transfer, there's a couple shots where even as I was watching it was just like
close-ups on the eyes and the panning, and that's fucking great.
Well, there even with the poor quality of the transfer, there's a couple shots where even as I was watching it was just like, wow, that looks fucking good. Like, I mean, and even with that poor quality, which I think speaks to the quality of the making of the film.
So, Gary, did you have any other?
Yeah, I had one more here from Bob Zerunkel. He gave it a 1 out of 10 on IMDb and said the real plot was how to get people to pay to see this tripe.
Sounds like a typical Zerunkel move.
Zerunkel.
Two Italian guys who once made some good movies about a guy who stands around and sometimes shoots people decide that they're going to do another movie about a guy who stands around and sometimes shoots people. For the guy who stands around and sometimes shoots people, they selected John Law. My understanding of this decision is that they saved money by hiring a model since he's not going to be acting anyway. So the guy who stands around and sometimes shoots people decides that the next people he shoots are going to be the other guys who shoot people. To help him out, he finds another guy who stands around and sometimes shoots people. The Italian guys cast Van Cleef in that role because he built a career out of standing around and sometimes shooting people. Plus, he's bald, which makes it a lot easier to tell which guy standing around and sometimes shooting people is which. The Italian guys decide that the plot is going to be the same basic plot as their big hit, but they put a big twist in it. Oh my. The twist is that Van Cleef isn't the bad. This time, he's the ugly. And he lives up to it. Oh, and the guns sound just like the guns in the Italian guy's hit movie, the one with the plot and the good actor.
That guy thinks he's very clever. You just know, like, he was Zerunkel's in this basement typing that shit in his mom's basement, typing that up, and just giggling at how clever he is.
Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing. I did want to mention that Anthony Dawson, who plays Four Aces, there's a big not conspiracy, what's the word, just confusion in Italian cinema, because there is an Italian B-movie director named Antonio Margheriti, but he went under a pseudonym, Anthony M. Dawson. And so like people are like, oh, Anthony M. Dawson, now is he the actor Anthony Dawson? And then they see, apparently there was a rumor that also Anthony M. Dawson did uncredited script work on Death Rides a Horse. And so it confused it even more.
Very confusing, yes.
Yeah.
So Anthony Dawson that's in this movie, by the way, is another one of those guys who just has a face to be a villain.
Because he's two James Bond villains.
He is. He's two James Bond villains. he's in Dr. No, where he plays, I think it's Professor Dent, who is like Dr. No's, not really his right-hand man, but he's kind of working for Dr. No, and he's kind of responsible for getting Bond to Dr. No's lair. Anyway, but he's also he does play Blofeld in From Russia with Love, which is the very next James Bond movie.
Which is super weird that you would do that. But I will say this for Anthony Dawson, not taking anything away from Wallace. Well, is that the last guy? The
Walcott.
I don't know.
Yeah, Luigi Pastilli.
Yeah, I like Anthony Dawson's villain face better, so I was more on board with him.
I expected him to honestly to be the main bad guy because he looks like he should be the main bad guy.
Right, exactly. And it seemed like he already had control. He's like the kingpin. He's got his little shitty bar and his
and Luigi Pastilli is one of the silents. He's also in some Giulio. So
but like in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I think he plays, if I'm not mistaken, he plays like a priest.
He plays a priest. Yep.
Yeah.
He
So
sure does.
So he doesn't have the villain face. He could also be the sweet priest guy.
He can have a villain face.
But I guess this villain also had to be a politician, and maybe they looked at Anthony.
Wow,
Dawson
what a stretch! Every villain in this movie ended up being politicians and business owners. Oh man. Anyway,
I was gonna say maybe they thought Anthony Dawson couldn't look like a politician that people would actually like, but we've also seen that can happen still.
Sure can.
Wait a minute, what are you guys referencing? I don't understand.
Recent history. We'll just leave it at that.
Oh, okay. All right. The Carter administration.
That's true.
If Jimmy Carter looks like
board.
A spaghetti Western villain.
If ever a president looked villainous, it's Jimmy Carter.
Yep, I got it. I'm on board.
If ever a president looked villainous, it's Jimmy Carter.
Yep, I got it. Yep, I'm with you.
I leave Jimmy Carter as more John Law than he is anything else. Just like, what does Jimmy Carter look like? I don't know.
A cartoon.
He just looks like a grandpa. I don't know. It's like somebody's grandpa out there picking peanuts. Is that what you do with peanuts? You pick them?
Yeah, that's probably why he didn't get the second term. It was just like, who is that guy?
Not villainous looking enough. Anyway, so yes, some people do not like this movie, as proven by some of those reviews that Gary read. But of course, in recent years, this movie has gained a pretty big cult following, largely due to the admiration of Quentin Tarantino. Of course, that is not necessarily mutual admiration, because I found a recent interview with Mr. Petroni, where it's not necessarily mutual admiration, because I found a recent interview with Mr. Petroni where he is asked about Kill Bill, and he's he's thankful that Tarantino has gotten the film in front of more people, because he's like, it's funny when you read a lot of these Italian directors' interviews, they're very, let's say, confident in themselves.
Yeah, right.
He's like, yeah, it's a great movie. People should be watching it. But Tarantino's admiration is kind of what got it in front of people. But he says about Kill Bill, he says, I must admit that I found the film quite boring. There's too much of everything. It's sort of cartoonish minestrone.
I love that he went with minestrone.
He went minestrone with it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, because I don't know. I think of minestrone like if I go to Olive Garden or something.
Minestrone is good.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I don't like it.
My wife makes it.
We know pizza. We know bologna. We know mortadella.
Oh, man. Yeah, he sounds, I don't know what happened to Petroni, but, I saw it. There's like a spaghetti Western site, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but.
Is it the Spaghetti Western Database?
Maybe that's the
also
one.
What happened to Giulio Petroni.
That's not a real thing. Is that a real thing?
He died 10 years ago. What, the Spaghetti Western Database?
Yeah,
I've already quoted it twice on this episode.
Yeah, I was about to say, we probably read the same interview, because he goes on in that interview and he talks about he feels like shut out, because they talk about him working with Morricone, and he says, the collaboration them, and he was like, it would be a long-lasting collaboration. I'd like to note that I made no less than 6 movies with Morricone, and they're never mentioned in articles, never. When he deservedly won an Oscar for his entire career 2 years ago, Walter Veltroni delivered a very eloquent speech in which, among other things, he named all directors Morricone ever worked with, but he never mentioned me, nor one of my films. You tell me, what is the reason for this?
Yeah, he's salty about it. He's a little salty about it.
Jeez.
So I don't know. The guy in the interview says, I know your thoughts on this.
I think it's
and
his,
they says, yes, let's move on.
It's his nephew interviewing him in that. It's a really great interview, actually. It's really entertaining.
Yeah, it's entertaining. I'm like, what were his thoughts on this? I want to know.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of a shame that this movie took so long to be held in higher regard, because I think it really is kind of one of the gems of the spaghetti Western, because a lot of Americans, especially if they know anything about spaghetti Westerns, they know the films of Sergio Leone, which deservedly, but I feel like those films are a bit of an outlier in the genre. There are 8 spaghetti Westerns. There's also a lot of not very good ones out there. I mean, with the exception of Leone's movies, or I think Sergio Corbucci, who did the Django movies, another favorite of Tarantino's. His are very good. But a lot of spaghetti westerns can be pretty boring, and they can be pretty cliche, filled with cliches. And this one's no different as far as being filled with cliches. But what I think this has going for it, and this is, you could say the same thing about Leone's movies, is that they're about more than just these like Western tropes that they're using, which a lot of the spaghetti westerns that were produced kind of coasted on that. But these, or on the violence, because that was, especially in the 60s, that was kind of a selling point because you weren't seeing that a lot in movies.
Right.
But I think Leone's movies and this movie have a sort of psychological drive to them. Like it's not just like gunfight. There's a writer that I read talking about this movie on a website called Senses of Cinema, and they called it a confused morality that this movie has, which I think is really interesting because, like something like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, even, you've got people who have questionable morals who you're still kind of rooting for. Like Lee Van Cleef's character is the most. I think I root for him more in this movie than I do for Bill, for John. It's
weird, right? Because he's also the guy that fucking murdered the dude's family. I think raped the mom and sister.
Yeah, exactly, but which you don't necessarily find out till later. Although it's not hard to guess,
right,
that he was in on it.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Like at the very beginning, for some reason, when he's getting out of jail, I'm like, well, that guy's obviously part of this gang. Like, it's not a very good spoiler to know that, or like not a very good reveal, or
because he's going after the gang the whole time, so he was obviously involved with them somehow.
Yeah, I was gonna say not a very
going after the gang the whole time, so he was obviously involved with them somehow.
Yeah, I was gonna say not a very good twist. The reveal still works, and it still is okay. Like it's still, I don't know. I guessed that at the beginning of the movie, but it was still cool. Like when it happens,
it didn't matter. It doesn't affect your enjoyment of the movie. But I think that's interesting that you kind of root for a guy who is very clearly a bad guy. I mean, we are met with him getting out of jail where he's been locked up for 15 years. Yes, he was framed, but he is still a criminal. But these movies, these films, and especially this one, they're about trauma and they're about retribution. They are revenge movies. They are like Kill Bill. They're stories of revenge. But it's revenge that's brought on by like a psychological trauma. Like these people something happened that fucked them up. Like, I mean, Death Rides a Horse is about a kid, a child who sees his entire family murdered. He sees his mother and sister raped, and his entire life is sort of pruning because you see how good he is with his gun. And it's just like he's spent the last 15 years training for this moment where he finds these guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I'm sure we'll get into more and more as this series progresses. But like the Tarantino like draw to the vengeance story is, I mean, he talks a lot in interviews just about that it's like a really easy common thread that like you could just imagine, like, it's used all the time. This kind of thing is now common, but at the time it was that you can relate to a vengeance story. You can relate to like a fantasy. Yeah.
It's a fantasy thing where people often will fantasize about getting revenge on somebody who has wronged them, but this they're seeing it play out on screen, something that they wouldn't necessarily do in real life.
Well, how about that? I mean,
it's wish fulfillment.
Exactly.
Anybody that's done you wrong,
seeing it play out on screen, something that they wouldn't necessarily do in real life.
Well, how about that? I mean,
it's wish fulfillment.
Exactly.
Anybody that's done you wrong, they may not have killed or raped your family, but
Hopefully.
slight, you kind of play that out in your head of just like, hunt them down and gun them down in a bar.
We'll take this back to like, I mean, a good through line here is that, I mean, whether or not you intended it, I mean, here we are with another series that like you could like connect it right back to Batman, like it's just the opening of like how Batman gets started. I mean, Batman's a Western story in like a different era or a different place,
Well, yeah, that reoccurring theme of the fear, that really, I mean, it really plays out in Batman. But God, think of how scared that little kid must have been to witness all that, and what that would do to him moving forward in his life, you know.
Well, they play that out in this movie too, dude. Like they
moving forward in his life, you know.
Well, they play that out in this movie too, dude. Like I mean, when they capture him after he shoots the one guy's brother, like Jose's brother or whatever, and I think that was legitimately his name. I don't mean to just throw out a name, but like his you know, the one guy wants to kill him, and then they're like, don't kill him, we got to take him so his brother can get vengeance or whatever. And they get there, and even his brother wants to go ahead and kill him, and the one guy's like, no, we need to know like who this is, like what this thing is. And it makes it more interesting because it goes back to the Van Cleef saying revenge is best eaten cold or whatever. You know, we've heard that. Wrath of Khan, you know, the Klingon says revenge is a dish best served cold,
which is quoted in the beginning of Kill Bill.
Yeah. And and it's all about how, like, well, it's one thing to like get vengeance right away and like be like just angry and you fight back and you get it, but it like 20 years later, and then you just casually stalk them and kill them, and they don't know why. Like they can't, right. Which is probably, you know, how they feel originally, you know? So it's like, you got to wait till there's like less emotional attachment to it. Like you can display less feeling in the moment to like just casually murder these people. And that's what's happening here. And they even get that. I feel like in the movie, they express that a little bit. Like, who is this guy? Why is he doing this?
Right.
I think one of my favorite like visual motifs in the film is the use of these like red tinted close-ups of Bill's eyes, which happens anytime that he sees one of his family's assailants as an adult. And this is something that Quentin Tarantino uses. Another one of the things that Tarantino is blatantly taking from this movie, because anytime the bride finds a member of the Deadly Viper assassination squad, the people who wronged her, of her eyes, you get that superimposed vision of her attack. And now Tarantino throws this like siren sound over it that jacks it up even further, I think.
Yeah. Right.
But that is 100% taken directly from this. And it's a great visual in this. And I don't know that had ever been done before, or at least not in any spaghetti Western I've seen. It's subtle. I mean, it's unsubtle. Excuse me. It's unsubtle, but it's effective. Like you get exactly what's happening in his mind when he sees these people. Immediately, you know what he's thinking.
Well, if I'm not
it's
mistaken,
blood red. He's got blood on his mind.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean, literally when you get to Van Cleef's one, he's got the skull necklace, and there's in the
skull ring.
Yeah. So that's probably even just based on that.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it absolutely is, because I mean that's again his background, his story, Bill's story in this movie is essentially very similar to O-Ren Ishii's. We don't see the sequence where he becomes like a deadly assassin or anything, but again, you can imagine him training his entire life, the last 15 years, for vengeance, which is what she's doing.
Let me throw this in there, and Justin, you can comment, or Todd, maybe, who I don't know even how much experience you have with spaghetti Westerns.
Very little. I'll go ahead and put that on Front Street.
So I don't know when and if like you've seen like The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, but I'll tell you something that I noticed about this too. And I read a little bit about it with Petroni. So I bought The Good and the Bad and the Ugly on like a special edition DVD that came in like a nice cardboard box and everything. I remember having Good and the Bad and the Ugly on like a special edition DVD that came in like a nice cardboard box and everything. I remember having seen it with my grandfather, who was the only person I ever watched Westerns with. And, all of this stuff. So I was really excited to watch it. And the first time I watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, when I got it, I thought it was fucking boring. I thought it was not that great. I thought it was really, really boring. And it took me a little bit to come around on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And now I think it's like excellent cinema, like some of the best ever. But spaghetti Westerns have a very, like the Italian sensibility for like making a spaghetti Western. It's more drawn out and it's longer than, you know, at the risk of sounding like Leonard Maltin here, you know, when we used to play that game, they're too long sometimes. They feel like a lot. And it's just like, get to the point, get to the next thing. This movie, by the way, though, like Petroni was very familiar with that. And he was very, the example I would say is like the role of the sheriff at the beginning of this movie, like there's never any lawmen or any like that much of a narrative set up. Like it feels like in the Dollars films, like they just kind of, you're dropped in and this thing's happening and they slowly like explain the story to you as it's going on. But like they spend a good bit of time, I feel like, on this movie giving you something that's more Americanized than what normal spaghetti westerns give you. And maybe I'm off base here, but just that the sheriff is like coming up to him on the porch, you know, and saying like, I know what's on your mind. I know what you've been thinking about. I knew your family better than anybody and blah, blah, blah. You know, like there's a structure to it, like a more like setting it up, like making sure you're sure, you know who this guy is, you know what he already went through at the beginning. And, you know, now he's meeting this other guy. I don't know. They feel like they making sure you're sure, you know who this guy is, you know what he already went through at the beginning. And, you know, now he's meeting this other guy. I don't know. They feel like I don't mean it to sound like Americans are idiots, but it does feel like they're it just does feel like they give you that stuff at the beginning of the movie. And it waits till about 30, 40 minutes into the movie before it just becomes another, like not just another, but like the style of a spaghetti Western. Right. Does all of that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think maybe that's why this one connects more than some of the other ones. I think Leone's movies are very easy to follow and things. I mean, even if they don't have your typical Western tropes necessarily, I think that they work really well. But yeah, this one, it's very palpable. I mean, it's just entertaining from beginning to end. It is everything. It is visually really outstanding. I mean, I think that it's got a great visual style. Obviously, an amazing score by Morricone. It's got morally complex characters, which is something you don't always get with Westerns, but it's always nice when you do. You know, I think all the best Westerns have morally complex characters. Like there's not a guy with a white hat and a guy with a black hat and they're facing off against each other. I think it's way more interesting when everyone's
to tell you that doesn't even matter. I mean, Lee Van Cleef, like right around this time, also is in like 16 episodes of Gunsmoke and always playing a different character. He's always the bad guy and he always dies and he's just like a different dude in each character because nobody cares. Nobody's like, it's just this is a bad guy, let's kill him. You know, like they don't like it never matters. But truth be told, Westerns should be a bit more complicated than that because you know,
and I think that's part of. And I think that's part of what. That's part of. And I think that's part of what. Why the front end of this movie tends to move a little bit slower because there is a bit of a complicated plot and some important character development. They do it at the front so that when it's the slow opening of the gate, you know, and just once that gate's completely open, here come the bulls. And then you're served up with the rest of the movie, which is, you know, to use a cliched phrase, action packed.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I feel like they, I mean, the Italian part of it is there's still the moments of like rando, you know, Bill's just
violence
sitting down at I mean, there's violence, but I was gonna say like, I mean, there's even the moments where he like sits down and like he stumbles upon the one dude like in the, you know, like he's going to the restaurant and then to get out of here and he's like, I don't, you know, she's like, they'll kill you. And he's like, well, people don't kill me without my permission. But like, that's like a lot. I mean, there's weird, slow moments of just character, I guess, but it's, I don't know. I would not say that.
I always have an issue with something being called slow, because I mean, and not that there aren't movies and that do move slow. But there's a difference. Be
misinterpreting here, but when he says like it takes a little while and then it's action packed, I'm like, well, it's not all action packed. Like there's a lot of moments of like just sitting around and talking.
Well, me and Gary have talked about this before, where I take I think sometimes when people say slow, they mean boring, and that isn't always necessarily the same thing, because something can be character development enough. You get enough, especially with Bill's character, to understand who he is and where he's coming from and everything.
Well, there's like, I mean, you go from like an action scene to like, I mean, there's the constant running, for lack of a better word, gag that happens in the movie where it's like one guy takes the other guy's horse and then they try to get to the town next. And then like, there's like that part of it. And in between, there's like sit down, talking it out moments between the two of them. And even you get that like time where like Van Cleef's like saying, I wish I would have had a son like you. Like, I can see that, like, and like I don't know.
It's
there's weird moments of like,
it's fun because it almost feels like they've got like a friendly competition between them, but it's not really that friendly. But then they reluctantly team up, and then they find a mutual, even after they find out by time the big reveal is made, they've had such a connection with each other to where an understanding with each other that it's not like he's like, yeah, let's finish this up, then you can kill me and I won't run. But it's Bill at that point has almost like changed, his heart's been changed a little bit by this relationship between the two. It's really cool, and it's something you don't see in a cliche Western very often.
It's complicated. I mean, the guy he's in a situation where, like, I don't know, Bill sees him as like who has been a father figure this whole time. And so for some reason, all of a sudden he's willing to have like some empathy for this guy who killed his family, which is morally like so complicated and just like fucked up. But like that he's like, you were in a different place. Like, and I'm in a different place, and like, so complicated and just like fucked up. But like that he's like, you were in a different place. Like, and I'm in a different place. And like,
to bring it back to Kill Bill, I mean, we see that at the end of Kill Bill Volume 2, where she's curled up on the floor crying, and then it turns to laughter. Like that relationship.
Well, that's also an effect of the truth serum that Bill shoots her with, because one of the side effects is euphoria.
Right, but at the same time, we're seeing all of that sort of open up and blossom, the complicated nature of the relationship between Bill and Beatrix. And just, I forget where I was going with this, but I mean, we see that it's not so simple. And I mean, I think a quest for revenge is rarely simple.
Well, and I think we'll get into it when Lee in love with. Mm-hmm, so it's very, very complicated.
Yeah.
Another thing too to bring up is like, sorry, Todd, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, over time we see Bill build that relationship with Ryan, so that by the time it is revealed, the nature of his quest it makes me think of D&D, like, people going on quests and stuff, but like the nature of his quest just got exponentially more difficult and more complicated because of that relationship. So anyway, Gary, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say,
I'm a little drunk. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We all are. I don't know. No, the one thing I was going to bring up is that, we talked about the morally complex situation of a Western and stuff like that. And, like it's hard to have like straight up good guys and bad guys in a situation like that. Whether we like to admit it or not, we're all situation of a Western and stuff like that. And, like it's hard to have like straight up good guys and bad guys in a situation like that. Whether we like to admit it or not, we're all spawns of we all come from like complicated backgrounds. And so there's a scene in the Blu-ray review. I just wanted to bring up this. I thought it was interesting. Like Alex Cox, like looked this up, and it was just like outside of when he goes into Anthony Dawson's character, Four Aces, like that bar, there's a sign outside that says like on display, Murrieta's skull or something like that. It's like on the wall outside of the building. And he like talks about looking it up, and it's just like, okay, so Joaquin Murrieta Carrillo. He was known as the Robin Hood of the West or the Robin Hood of El Dorado. And like, he's like legit dude. You can look him up. Like he was a Mexican and he was sick of like some American imposition like on what was going on in their country. And so he fought back against them and just like started robbing from Americans, like giving to Mexicans. And they ended up catching him and killing him and cutting off his head. They put it in a glass jar and they actually took it on tour around the West. Like you could come look at Joaquin Murrieta's skull or like his head, like in the glass jar. And he was just basically like, what art department knew that? Like, he was just like, who are these people? Like just that kind of detail. Like
That's
I don't know.
hilarious.
It's just weird stuff from them.
Yeah. So I'm
like Johnny Carson. Weird stuff.
Weird, wacky stuff.
That's gonna really.
But speaking
go
of heads,
with
I will say,
listeners,
emphasize people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many great faces in this movie.
Yeah.
Like just some really cool, just people that are cast in this movie that are just all memorable.
And that honestly, before we wrap up, I have to mention that final siege, like the gun battle at the end of this movie, is, I mean, it's not quite the Wild Bunch, which would come a couple years later, but it feels like a precursor to the Wild Bunch. Like it really truly does, because the Wild Bunch was 1969, I think. And it really truly feels like this was, I don't know if Peckinpah saw this movie, but it feels like he did. It feels like he did.
It seems like this movie's pretty influential. I mean, not just to Tarantino, but to a lot of folks.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
I was just gonna say, I think the same dude, like what was it named? Carlo Carlini, did all the camera work, was like the cinematographer basically for like this movie. He was for a few dollars more. He was for this movie. So again, like some of that same.
There's a reason this looks as good as a Leone movie,
right?
Well, I think that's it for Death Rides a Horse, guys. That's episode 1 of our Kill Bill series, 6 Degrees of Kill Bill. So this whole series is going to be kind of a variety of genres. We tried to keep them pretty diverse as far as the genres go. So next week, where it's going to be another revenge movie, I'll go ahead and tell you that revenge movies are going to be a through line through not every one of these movies, but several of them. And the one we're talking about next week is a Japanese film from 1973 called Lady Snowblood. And man, let me tell you, once you watch this movie, from the opening credits, the very beginning of the movie, you will immediately see just how influential this movie is on Kill Bill. As always, you can find in a lot of places, most of the movies we talk about, we try to find stuff you can stream online. Hit up cinemashock.net. We've got links there where you can stream every movie that we talk about if it's available to stream. And this one certainly is as of this recording. I guess that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you for joining again, Todd. Thank you, Gary, for
thanks for
helping me do some research, and thank you guys for listening. You guys have anything else to add?
No,
I
don't.
Really enjoyed this. I'm probably going to go get the Blu-ray.
Good.
I'm glad you liked it, man. It really is good, and I'm trying to be like real when I told the story about like the good, the bad, the ugly. I think spaghetti westerns are weird. They're not like standard westerns. I mean, there is a difference in the way that they're made, and so. Like there's a totally different style. This one does try to help you along at the beginning, like to ease you into it. So in that sense, honestly, I could totally see anybody who has, and I know that's probably blasphemy to a lot of other people that have like, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or Fistful of Dollars and stuff like that. But it's a really solid movie, and I love the way it plays out. And I think everybody is cast to perfection. Lee Van Cleef and John Law in this movie. Like John Law is a guy who could appear perfectly bland in any other movie, but in this one, the dialogue and the scripting like make him stand out as like a guy that I was looking up afterwards. Like, what the fuck did this guy do? Like, where did he go?
Yeah,
and because he seems like he's served like he's $1 million in this movie, and it's great.
Yeah, and I hope that our listeners enjoy, our forays into some of these weirder genres, because I want to do more stuff like this, because I think this stuff is really fun to explore. There's a million podcasts out there talking about blockbusters, and not that we won't do that. Obviously, we talked about Christopher, because I want to do more stuff like this, because I think this stuff is really fun to explore. There's a million podcasts out there talking about blockbusters, and not that we won't do that. Obviously, we talked about Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, and we'll revisit some bigger movies like that on occasion. But I think that, talking about movies like this, there's 100 million movie podcasts out there. I think it's going to be really fun to explore some of the lesser known corners of the movie universe and go deeper into those movies than most people would be willing to, because honestly, it's very difficult. As me and Gary have discovered on this one, it's very difficult to find information on some of these.
Takes a lot longer than you think. Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you think about this episode and about this series, and we would love to hear your feedback on it. We are at cinemashock.net. I think you can email us on there. I don't know, but you can always hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. We're on Twitter at cinema_shock. Same, loading all of our audio episodes to YouTube. We are also doing the occasional live stream on YouTube.
At the time of this recording, every episode of our show is in the process of uploading to YouTube. Although nice. I did try this new experiment where I'm doing one day at a time. Yeah. So they're like all in there. They're just scheduled to appear one day later. Just that way they'll does.
Yeah, sure. Why not? But anyway, where can you guys be found on the internet?
I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and D&D Beyond.
Todd, it's good to have you back for like 2 episodes in a row. I just want to say, and
I know. I'm so sorry, guys.
Happy to be here. I just wanted to establish that. I'm just glad to have you.
We're happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Gary, how about you?
Hi, Matt. This is Gary Horn. Easy enough for everything, even the hackers.
I'm at Justin _Bishop. I'm at Justin _Bishop. Again, find Cinema Shock everywhere. Like us, review us and rate us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you can rate and review us. Hit us up at cinemashock.net. Find all our old episodes, or find a link to our t-shirts and buy a t-shirt. We don't make hardly any money off of them, so it's cool if you want to buy them just to support the show. So
that's all we're looking for.
We're not making any money off of
you
them.
Can't find t-shirts for as cheap as these t-shirts. Just get some Cinema Shock t-shirts and hoodies and shit and wear it around and tell people to look at us
and tag us on Instagram, and we'll repost you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we would love to do that.
Suck your dick.
And it'll be the best you've ever had.
And if you don't have one, he'll suck whatever you tell him to.
Well, until next week, I guess.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
Be excellent to each other.
Johnny has the keys.